Welcome to Contracting 101 for Employers, everything you need to know. My name is Shearman. I'm the technical consultant specialising in software development, engineering and infrastructure recruitment here at Digital Talent Co. And I'm joined by my colleague and our marketing consultant, Kayla Wren.
Hello everyone. As I'm sure some of you might be aware, Digital Talent Co is a boutique recruitment agency specialising in digital talent. We've successfully recruited for some of Australia's most loved digital agencies, startups and scale-ups, financial services, ASX listed companies and more.
Kayla and I have a unique role. Every day we're speaking to countless business owners, HR specialists, founders, CTOs, CMOs, you name it. And as we're all coming out of the COVID fog, businesses are looking at what's next. And more importantly, what the next steps will look like.
What we are currently seeing is a greater appetite for flexible talent solutions for a variety of reasons. Some I'm sure we will discuss today. Businesses are looking at hiring contractors. And for a lot of businesses, this is a new way of doing things. Today is all about answering your burning questions when it comes to contracting employees.
And when it comes to sourcing the best contracting digital talent in the market, we've got you covered. But when it comes to payrolling and insurances, we actually partner with Oncore. A bit of background on Oncore. They were founded over 20 years ago by a professional IT contractor. Brenton's passion for contracting fueled the success of Oncore's ECM and made them the first cloud-based contractor management platforms. Oncore operates with over 50 staff across the globe with offices in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Sunshine Coast, London and Auckland. And we are very lucky today to be joined by the big gun, Oncore's founder and executive director, Brenton Henderson. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Brenton.
Thanks very much for having me.
Beautiful. Brenton, before we get stuck into the questions, did you want to tell us a little bit more about what made you start Oncore over 20 years ago now?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, though I thoroughly enjoyed contracting and had great experience contracting here in Australia and in the UK through some excellent recruitment agencies at some really great corporates. The financial management of the contract, and I refer to the billing, the payroll and the expense management, it was a hassle. And I thought there must be a better way of doing this for all the parties involved. So 21 years ago, this is our 21st year, we started Oncore.
Beautiful. All right, so look, here is how today is going to work. We have compiled the top 20 questions we received from our clients, and there are a lot of them and a lot of content to cover, but I'm sure we'll smash through it. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, why would I use a recruitment agency for contractors?
Perfect. So I think a few things to get started with is obviously it's easy and convenient. You can hand over the responsibility, the headhunting, vetting and management, as well as it is quite fast in terms of we already have a pipeline of talent on hand. Most of our contractors have had a long-term relationship with Digital Talent Co, and we have contracted them to our other clients, so we know their standard and we know how they'll be able to execute for you.
I guess adding on to that, it's kind of the same reason why you'd hire a recruiter for a perm placement. Talent and good talent isn't easy to find. As it's my full-time job, I can say that it is definitely a challenge, particularly in niche areas of software engineering. And my job is to know the best talent in market, what's happening in industry, and making sure my network reaches those far corners. And I guess the other reason is a lot of great contractors don't actually apply for jobs. They're not trawling through Seek or Indeed. They have really tight-knit relationships with their recruiters, and they're always having opportunities handed to them. So they don't really need to take themselves to market. So if you do want to access those types of people, you're going to have to go through a recruiter like us.
Absolutely, I'd agree with that. In my experience, both as a contractor and at Oncore, we found that a skilled and reliable recruitment agency brings a lot of value in the talent acquisition to both the contractor and the corporate client. So that's in and around connecting the best talent to the right roles.
Beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we're just going to move on to the next question, which is, why would I want a contractor compared with a full-time employee?
You want to keep going?
I had a crack at both of those, full-time employment and contracting. Look, it's fairly broad, but I'd focus on the flexibility and rapid impact. Highly skilled contractors will hit the ground running at that corporate. And then depending on the longer goals of the corporate, a permanent person can be found and trained, and the contractor can move on to a new role. Sometimes you move internally as a contractor at that client and or flow back out into the talent pool and onto a new gig somewhere else. So that's what works well.
Yeah. And I guess for employees, it's a much more flexible way to scale up and down your resources as you need them. So like me, I do a lot of software engineering placements, and why would a business hire a permanent full-time React developer when really the project's only going to take 2 months, and then they can allocate the financial resources elsewhere afterwards?
Yeah, and I guess just to add there, for businesses that are resource tight, you can get this contractor to come in, execute the project at a high level, and then when their work is done, they can leave, costing your business no more in terms of pay.
Yeah, definitely. And another really common question we get is who handles the payroll? So who is paying this contractor? It's a great question and one I'm answering all the time. Essentially, here's a high-level view of how it would work. So essentially, the contractor is employed by us, Digital Talent Co, and we provide them to you. They're then paid through us using Oncore's amazing services, and then you simply receive an invoice at the end of that. And that's actually really how easy and streamlined it can be.
Yes, and the agency can pay the contractor if they wanted to have an internal billing and payroll department, but it's one of the key service offerings that we deliver at Oncore, which allows the recruiter to focus on their core skill sets, and then everybody gets the best of talent in those 3 different areas.
Yeah, yeah. And Brenton, this is probably one for you. How does it work? Like, what is that hiring arrangement?
In most cases, there are always exceptions to the rules, but in most cases, there are formal contractual agreements made between the recruitment agency and Oncore to ensure this is all handled in a fully compliant way, because that's what we want here. Contractors to come on board in a very, very compliant, risk-free manner.
Yeah. And I think that's another really big benefit of outsourcing this to companies like a recruitment agency or Oncore, is that a lot of people don't consider the insurance implications or those different compliancy issues that they probably don't have with full-time employees. Contractors are a different ballgame, which kind of leads nicely into our next question, which is, what about insurance? Brenton?
And you're dead right. We're often busy focusing on what our companies do, and we don't think about sometimes the insurances, which is in a lot of cases in and around risk and risk management. So Oncore caters for and manages the professional indemnity, the public liability, and the employment-based insurances, so that the parties can engage, knowing that risk has been mitigated.
Yeah, and I guess for us, we're working with a lot of startups and scale-ups, and they are moving at the speed of light. They don't have time to kind of worry about those different things. But in saying that, it's very important that they're in place if something does go wrong. So yeah, as Brenton said, the professional indemnity, the public liability, the workers' comp, that is all kind of inclusive in a contractor packaging. And the other note is that we are a licensed Queensland contracting provider.
Yeah.
All the boring stuff is up on the screen rather than us reading it.
Boring but important.
So how do I know how many hours my contractor is working?
Okay, it is a little bit of a quirky question, but it's obviously very important to everybody for a lot of different reasons. But it's a combination of solutions. Corporates may well have their own internal time and attendance capture. A scenario for that might be project tracking. They might need to do that sort of level of capture, not only for time worked against things from a billing perspective, but tracking against projects. Alternatively, Oncore can facilitate this as part of our service. We have a solution that allows the contractors to come in, enter their time, approvers to approve, and subsequently, based on that, then the billing and the payroll can occur.
Yeah, just like exactly following on with what Brenton said, Oncore is a gem with this. We kind of have our platform on there. Our contractors jump on and submit a timesheet at the end of the week, which is then submitted to their manager within your business. Mm-hmm. You approve that, and only then will the invoice be issued.
Yeah, and again, adding some more there, I think most seasoned contractors are used to using a variety of project management tools to track their efforts. They've probably been doing it every time they kind of shift to a new contract. Some that we probably recommend using would be Clockify, Toggle, and Harvest, and that'll just make it super easy at the end of the week for your contractor to kind of just pop down the total number of hours straight in for you to then add into Oncore.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on the level of oversight you want. Like I know that we use Clockify internally, just kind of sound check how we're spending our time, and we could kind of do a export of what that looked like in terms of division of time. What happens if I want to hire my contractor full-time. So you're loving the contractor, they're amazing, and you want them to become part of your permanent team.
Yeah, well, I think if you end up loving your contracting candidates as much as we think you will, and your business needs grow to require them full-time, we can work with you and the contractor to make that full-time permanent placement a reality. So what that could look like is pretty similar to any full-time permanent placement, and our one-off fee would come into play here, but that will all be covered in our terms of business, and before anything's kind of signed, we can have that discussion. It also depends on your needs. Like if you feel like that growth could be coming, like we can discuss that at the start.
Yeah, I think a super important point to note here, I'm sure we'll discuss it later on as well, is not all contractors want to translate into that permanent placement. So that's something really important to identify early on in the job briefing, and something we'll work with you on is, are you wanting the option to extend them or make them a permanent part of your team? And that'll kind of refine how we headhunt and the type of personalities and people that we're hunting for.
Yeah.
Brenton, did you have anything to add on that question?
No, look, I think it's important that the terms and conditions are covered between the three parties. That there's plenty of scenarios where it works very, very well for somebody to convert from a contract contingent role to a permanent role. Happens all the time. And it makes perfect sense too for the parties that fits for that role. You know, sometimes you don't foresee exactly what's going to happen, but after a period of contract time, the corporate says, "Yep, really would like to have this person stay," and the contractor goes, "Yes, I'm loving it here, so I'm going to come on board." It works. It's a good model.
And I mean, the great part about it is you've kind of already had that probation. You've sound checked. Do you like each other? Does it fit?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pretty safe hire as well, because you've already had that kind of getting to know each other phase.
Exactly.
For both parties, try before you buy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What if they don't fit my business? That's another question we get quite a lot.
Yeah, look, contracting is that flexible engagement model, and contractors have terms that they happy to sign to. And when sometimes things don't work out, we all know that the market is relatively fluid. Then the engagement can cease, and it is one of the benefits of that flexible contract workforce. You can ramp it up, you can pull it back down.
Absolutely, and I think for us, the standard, arrangement is a 7-day notice period. So this can go both ways though. So you could give your contractor 7 days notice, or they can give you, like if they've found something else or want to move on, or if they don't fit, if they feel like they don't fit into your business, it does go both ways, that notice period.
Yeah, and I think what Brenton said about fluid is quite important too. Like it really depends on that engagement and what that contract looks like. For example, right now we have a contractor out there doing 10 hours. I highly doubt that that contractor, I haven't seen it, but that has a 7-day notice period. Mm-hmm. So it really just depends on what that engagement looks like. A 12-month maternity leave cover is going to look very different to a 10, 20-hour project.
Yeah.
Righty. The next question we always get is, does the contractor bring their own tools and equipment?
Look, experience with our customers and personally is that if needed, most contractors are more than happy to enter into a bring your own device contract, because often as not, they have the kit anyway. They're usually well set up with, high-end laptops, mobile phones, all that sorts of things. It just comes down to the corporate clients' security models. But in my experience, very happy to enter into a BYOD contract.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you said, most seasoned contractors they might already have their own equipment. However, I think we need to also consider the current circumstances, because some regular full-time employees will be taking on contract roles during this time, and meaning they may not have the tools and equipment necessary. So I think it does need to be a conversation that you're having at the start. And it also depends on the engagement itself and the company's security, because someone's personal computer might not be able to access the system. And I guess, like I said, this will be all discussed before any contracts are signed and they start, I guess.
I think that a reoccurring theme is it just really depends on the engagement and what your business needs, as well as what that contractor can bring.
Yeah.
So all of this is very general in nature, but once we're able to sit down and discuss the nitty-gritty with you, we can give a more bespoke kind of look at what that contracting engagement would look like. The next question is, can I have all my full-time employees as contractors? We're talking about how great contracting is, and it's a great solution, but at the same time, I would caution you to not just convert all your employees to contractors. The Fair Work is pretty strict about that, and there is some key differences between a full-time permanent employee or a full-time part-time employee, I got there, and an independent contractor. So it's up on the screen. I'll also be sharing the Fair Work Ombudsman link with you, but it comes down to degree of control, hours of work they're doing, the expectation of work, the risk that individual person is taking, superannuation, tools and equipment, tax, method of payment, and leave. All those different things are considered. So yeah, it's always good to have a balance of full-time employees and then your contractors as well. Moving on to the next question. What if I wanted to extend my contractor's contract? Brenton?
Yeah, look, with my contractor hat on, look, I think it's always good policy to retain contract-based talent by negotiating those contracts as early as possible. Everybody likes to know what's going on. So a good professional recruitment agencies, take digital talent, for example, and they make this a really easy process for all the parties involved.
Absolutely, what Brenton said. It's simply a matter of updating paperwork, getting it signed off by both parties, and then submitting it to our friends over on Oncore. If any negotiations or support are required here, this is really where we step in and kind of act as that middleman, but also kind of that industry experience negotiator. What happens if I want to cut a contract short? I feel like we kind of covered this earlier, but it really comes down to what that individual contract looks like. For us, generally speaking, it's 7 days. And that's just to look after both parties. We don't want a contractor leaving you with no notice, but also likewise, we don't want a contractor to be dropped with no notice. So it's just a whatever time frame is mutually respectful for both parties. But ultimately, yes, you can cut a contract short if you need to. Did you have anything to add there, Brenton?
I just think it's part of the benefit for both parties. That's the whole point of having this scenario, and the contracts paint the picture. Each party acts professionally. It's fine. It's a natural occurrence.
And I think the really common buzzword we're going to be using is fluid. The whole point of contracting is that it is fluid. So if your project wraps up earlier, or if the project doesn't need to continue on, or you need a different resource in the building, it can definitely be cut short because it is a fluid arrangement. Moving on to the next question. What if I don't know how long I need a contractor for? Brenton?
It's pretty common, isn't it? I mean, you know that you might need a kickoff for a project. You may not necessarily have all details locked down, but you know you need some of these talent skill sets now. So rolling contracts are very common. For example, I worked at some contracts in London for 2 years plus in different corporates. So yeah, very common.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have quite a few rolling contracts right now. What it looks like from a day-to-day point is we kind of discuss what an average term would look like. So I'm expecting the project will be 3 months, and then we set that as a time frame purely from a contract paperwork perspective. But then we just keep in contact and keep reevaluating. Is the project going to be wrapping up quicker? Is it going to be wrapping up? Is there more to it than you thought? Do you want to do a follow-on project? And just making sure that all the different parties are kept in the loop. For the most part, if everyone's getting communicated to effectively, it's really easy to keep that contract rolling. The big one, why is this conversation relevant right now?
It is the big one, isn't it? Look, from our perspective, and having been in the contracting game for a considerable period of time, when you come into these uncertain times, look, a highly skilled, flexible workforce is an excellent solution for corporates. They can react quickly to change in the market. You can ramp down or ramp up the workforce as needed. So now is a really, really good example of why a flexible workforce works.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I'm noticing a lot of employers, rightly so, are feeling a little bit of trauma from early COVID. And to be honest, some businesses have lost their confidence to make permanent decisions in what does feel like a constantly shifting environment. And we absolutely get it. Contracting is that less committal option to help them scale their workforce and still work towards achieving their business goals. Just another thing that I've noticed in the market is that some projects were frozen over a 2-month period. I'm calling it the COVID black hole. And so now these organisations are behind their target schedules, and so they're needing to put more resources onto a project than they were anticipating just to get it done within that time frame.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing to consider is somehow businesses and hiring managers are the busiest they've ever been, dealing with onboarding remotely, remote working, making sure employees are, I guess, mental health, things like that. So contracting is a more convenient, faster approach to getting resources into urgent projects. So I guess with the potential to employ them full time in the future if they fit into your business.
Yeah, the question we always get. This is probably in the top 5 for me. Is What is that pay arrangement? What does that look like, Brenton?
Yes, so the contractor rate is all inclusive with regards to super, and usually the main one that people ask about. GST's tacked on, that's fine. But look, one of the benefits of that contractor rate is from a budgeting perspective, CFOs and management accountants love knowing this is exactly what it's going to cost. So, project forecasting, those sorts of things, it's an all-inclusive rate.
Yeah. For us, our method is definitely, we definitely prefer, and most of our contractors are through a PAYG. So it's a contractor's base rate, whether that be hourly, daily, weekly, or full-time equivalent, including super. The other option is to hire the contractor as a PTY LTD. The reason why I don't prefer it is there's a lot of different compliance checks just to make sure that they are set up correctly. The insurances, all those different nitty-gritties. The PAYG is a simpler process for everyone. At this stage, we don't accept sole traders just because of due diligence. So the 2 options are definitely the PAYG or the PTY LTD, with the PAYG definitely being the more common one. What are the benefits and pitfalls of hiring a contractor, Brenton?
Look, the benefits, I would say, are but not limited to that overarching flexibility. This is the real value proposition of hiring contractors. Ramping up and down a workforce is needed. Access to this highly skilled workforce without a long-term commitment by the corporate, and that's the main overarching benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've spoken a lot about benefits. Obviously, there are a lot. There's just a few different pitfalls, I guess, due to COVID and the current time and this trend of full-time employees moving into contract positions, you may lose some of your contractors hired during COVID to other full-time roles when they start popping up again.
Yeah.
I think,
There's I guess with anything, there's pros and cons to having a permanent employee. There's pros and cons to having a contractor. The most obvious one is that a contractor's hourly cost is more expensive than a permanent employee. But then at the end of the day, you're paying less over that full life cycle of the team member. So I'm not really sure if it's a pitfall. It's just something to note. And I guess if your plan is to move them into a full-time permanent placement, it's just recognizing that it's not always possible, or it's not always something that contractor wants. I've got a lot of career contractors and they like getting in, getting that project done, and then moving on. So again, it's just making sure that what you want as a business is kind of taken into consideration in that hiring phase, and the right people identified early on. Did you have anything to add on that one, Brenton?
I'll just agree with it about the costing. Sometimes people might be a little bit concerned, and it does come up for us time to time, that our contract is expensive. Used properly in the flexible model, it should be cost neutral because you're bringing in resources that you need when you need them, getting the high impact and letting them flow back out. So it's important to understand that it's about the tenure for the result over and above just the hourly and the daily rate.
And for me, I noticed that the contractors kind of go in, they get it done really quickly and they pop back out. So the top hour, each hour is used much more efficiently than and I'm saying this as a permanent employee, you're there forever. So you're not probably spending every hour as efficiently as you could be, because you're not getting paid hourly, if that makes sense.
It does depend, obviously. Depending on the person, but
So what do I need to know, or what do I need to do in the onboarding process, and also looking at kind of onboarding remotely during COVID?
Yes, look, and remote has become the big topic now, isn't it? Because we're a lot more used to having people not coming into the building. And the fantastic part about that is that the onboarding platforms, look, I can't really think of too many scenarios where you can't do that digitally and remotely. Now, a good quality onboarding platform to ensure the contractors are work ready is critical. People need to turn up on site. Some corporates have their own very specific needs, especially when it comes to sites that have important safety standards. So a good quality onboarding tool and a well-supported process is important. Anything I'd add to that is that contractors, you want to bring them in, have high impact. So you don't want the onboarding process to be onerous. It's got to be effective, but it's also got to be efficient. Bringing somebody in as quickly as possible, getting them up to speed so they can start delivering what you're paying for.
Absolutely. For me, I don't really care whether your employee is permanent or temp. A good onboarding process is critical to ensuring they meet the standards of your company, they get your culture, and they completely understand your service and product on a high level kind of perspective, so that they can see how their role or their project fits into that bigger picture. Granted, for contractors or temps, the onboarding process can be sped up. Kind of like me after my third coffee, it doesn't need to be a long process, but it's still important to have it in place, because this kind of ties into our next question, which is, how can contractors be part of the culture?
Yes, look, I think it's an important question, and it's once again a very critical sort of to get right. So look, for all intents and purposes, contractors, wherever I work, they're treated exactly the same from an inclusion perspective as the permanent members of staff by their managers and co-workers. These people are far more likely to stay for the duration that they're needed at the contract. And as we talked earlier about contractors flowing back out into the market, if they're treated the same culturally and they're felt inclusive to the whole process, they're most likely to come back to that company when their skills are needed again. If that process was not a quality process, I would say, and people felt excluded rather than included, a great talent might leave the building and never come back. So it's really critical to get that right.
Well, what's worse, go back into market and say how much of a terrible time they had it.
That's right. That's right. Bad news spreads fast, right?
Yeah. I think some simple things that you can do to, I guess, little benefits that you can give them that you would your full-time employees could be inviting them to join morning teas in the office or celebrating team members' birthdays. But a big thing is getting them to understand your why and what makes your business tick and kind of what makes it flow.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm often talking to businesses, particularly kind of in the engineering technical space, and we always get into the topic of their offshoring failures. And the truth is, if you treat your contractor, whether they're offshore or local, like a disposable resource instead of a critical team member, of course, it's not going to be anywhere near as successful an engagement as it could be. I know a lot of organizations kind of view culture like a little cherry on top, but the truth is that when culture's done right, it dramatically impacts your business outcomes. So embed the contractor into your culture, help them understand the bigger picture, and you'll definitely reap the rewards as they will deliver more value for you. But also, as I said before, they're going to go back into market and they're going to talk about that amazing experience they had, which will help you attract them in the future, but also other types of phenomenal talent.
Yeah, definitely.
Very true.
Now, what is the personality of a great contractor?
I think for me, it's confident, fast learner, adaptable, and autonomous. I think someone with a broad range of experience in the range of different areas that are relevant to you and your business. I think is like anyone, obviously there's 4 main things that you can tick off, but that will just make it such a bit more of a seamless process, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Brenton, do you have any personality traits that you look for or that you think work best?
I agree wholeheartedly on those traits. A good contractor turns up, fits in quickly, asks the right questions and becomes productive. I would also add that a good contractor would impart and share knowledge so that when they leave the building, the people that are still there have picked up some things from them. And I would say good contractors also pick up a lot from their team members as well when they go to the next role. So they're the common traits that I would see of a good contractor.
Yeah. Something that I really look for is proven experience. So what intelligence and knowledge can they bring from their previous contracts directly into that project that you need them for? It's a bit cheeky, but also they're in the market learning all these different things from different industries and companies. Why wouldn't you want to leverage off that? Something I also really look for is someone that's got that roll up the sleeves and get it done attitude. You don't want someone that's going to dilly-dally. You don't want someone that kind of wants to pass the buck. You want them to roll up their sleeves and really get in and get it done.
High impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, we are going to leave it there.
Yeah, all right. So let's give Brenton a big virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for spending your lunchtime providing your insights and expertise with us. We really appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
thanks very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Time. Awesome. Our details are up on the screen. So we specialize in both permanent and contracting recruitment. So no matter your recruitment needs, we can definitely lend a hand. For us, we take a really consultative approach. So even if you're feeling uncertain, pick up the phone and have a chat, and we can work with you to kind of assess your situation and figure out what would be best for you, whether that is a permanent employee, a contractor, or maybe a different engagement that you hadn't thought about. Brenton, do you have any final words for us?
No, thank you very much. I think it's been great. I think the information that you've shared through this media will be great for the corporates who are wondering why and how can we go about hiring some good quality contract talent. And I think it's a win for everybody involved.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.